Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Turnkey user group. My name is Sean Hunter. I've done a few of these presentations up to this point, if you've been to any of them. Today I'm going to be speaking with you about business intelligence as a whole, and then we are definitely going to dive into some of the different tools that are available out there. I won't go through them all because there are a lot of them that are available out on the web and to purchase and everything along those lines. But well, I wanted to start with this, and I know the title of this and everything was, business intelligence tools, which I will definitely get to. But every time I do one of these, it's let's talk a little bit about the underlying concepts. What is it that makes up business intelligence? What thought processes should you go through if you're going to start up a project with BI in mind? So I wanted to discuss some of those different topics with you as we go through it. So here's my agenda, what I plan to go through. So what is business intelligence? We'll talk about strategic concepts and some of the decision-making processes that go into it. Short bit on where you should start. Then we'll get into some of the different ways that you can display the BI, and then I'll go through examples and some of the demonstrations with them, and then get to some questions at the end. So to begin with, so what is business intelligence? What is BI these days? So anytime you're thinking of business intelligence, what comes to mind? There's a lot of different topics for it out there, obviously. It is a broad topic. It's an umbrella topic for it. So it's going to span for multiple activities. You're going to go through, you're going to, those activities are going to go across analyzing, mining data, querying that data, figuring out how you're going to visualize it, how you're going to present it to your users and everything along those lines. So there is a long train of different things that go into making business intelligence. And it's not narrowed down to a specific topic. It is providing you with information that is important to help drive those different areas. The main premise today, and because there's so much competition out there in developing BI and providing BI solutions, is you as an end user should be able to, once BI has been developed in your company, you've defined it, you've gone through all the steps that I'm going to cover in a moment, you as a user can dig through it yourself. Just as we were seeing with Chris while he was up here, the idea being that you're the end user. You're using Profix, you're working with Profix, you're able to go in and do your own analysis. You're not limited to say and call up to somebody and say, can you run this for me? Can you send me this report? Can you dig through this? What are our numbers today? So that's the idea, is that you're getting through and you're empowered as a user at that point once it's developed. So just kind of looking through, I wanted to show kind of the structure that makes this up and how you go through some of the different things. And this works well because it's weighted. It's, everything relies on another piece to go through it. So as you're going through and you're digging through and figuring out what your BI process is going to be, you've got all these different layers that are working together in unison to make that process work. So you start down at the bottom, you've got your data sources, that's where the data is pulling from, whether it's internal or external. You've got the data composition. Now we're going to grab that data from wherever in the world we need to get it from. We're going to compose it, make it look pretty. We're going to review that data once we get it together. Does everything make sense? We're going to mine that data. So once we have the data in a relevant piece, we've brought all of the pieces together. Now we're going to start going through and looking for any of those anomalies and reoccurrences and different aspects of that data. Once we find those different aspects that we want to report off of, we validate it and everything, then we're looking at the presentation layer. So we bring it up, we compose it, we make it look pretty, and then we've got decision making that should hopefully be triggered off of that. So you have all these things working together to make up that business intelligence process. So the layers that make that up can be anything. Anywhere you can think of data originating from can start out in our first layer here. So, I've just got general topics here. You've got Excel, you've got outside data, you've got something with financials, you've got ERP softwares, you've got CRM, anything that generates any type of data, whatever it may be, any type of system that can kick that data out. It could be somebody who's manually entering a spreadsheet, obviously. All of that at that lowest level, those are our data sources. That's where we want to be able to grab some data from. And then that next level up as we're working through is our data warehouse. And that's where we're composing all the data, we're bringing it together, we're unifying it, making it all relevant in one spot. So we don't have to go out and say, all right, now I got to run over to my CRM system and grab this piece of data. Now I got to run to the ERP system and grab that. I've got an Excel spreadsheet sitting over here, I'm going to go there. So you're looking at centralizing all of that data and put it together. And then after we get past there, we've got our reporting and our analysis layers that go with it, where, again, you're past the data warehouse, now you're taking it and you're reporting that relevant pieces of data. So just a quick bit, I know everybody mentions data warehousing, and just thought I would throw this in there as a good definition of what I understand a data warehouse to be. So it's a normalized set of data. So just that topic there, it's a normalized set of data. You're grabbing data, you're pulling it together, you're taking data from CRM, you're taking data from GP, whatever it may be, and you're composing it in a way that unifies it all. It all talks together. It's brought together, it's made generalized. You've got a SOP number over here, you've got an opportunity number over here in CRM, maybe you have something else in a spreadsheet, whatever it may be, you're bringing it together and you're making it all talk to itself. Data should be consistent, obviously, in the composition and structure, and I throw that one in there only from the standpoint that you don't want these to be a moving target. Once you compose the data and you get it together and everything, you've really got your data put together in the data warehouse. It shouldn't be a moving target. There shouldn't be many changes going on to it. It should be one of those things that once composed, you're just able to continue dumping that data into there, because then it's always the same. Data should be refreshed on a schedule, and definitely should be separate from the production database. You don't want a lot of reporting plowing against your production database and slowing people down from being able to process on a daily basis because you're running a report. I've seen that one happen, which is fun. You've probably seen it too as you start to build up more and more data in GP. Some of the smart lists might slow down certain aspects of the system and such, but it's kind of the idea. If you can separate it from there, absolutely. Whenever GP deploys, there's one that it separates out into a data warehouse. I've even seen individuals and companies that once they go to a certain point, they have a reporting server that they go off to. So there's some different strategies there if you're noticing any latency in running reports. So the next one is the Dynamics GP can be deployed with a data warehouse populated on a schedule. So as your GP was deployed, analysis services get deployed, and it actually plugs a data warehouse out into your database by default. If you don't have any of that state, then absolutely bring it up to us. But if you ever were interested in looking at kind of how the data warehouse is composed, the idea there is, once again, it's aggregated data. It's grabbing all this different relevant data from GP and it's putting it together, giving you all these different metrics to go off of, months and quarters and periods that are easily accessible and attained from there. So that's the idea with it. And what you're looking for is the data should be a consolidated, and I throw that one in there, should be historical and consolidated for analysis. So the more that you can get together in one table, obviously, the better. Grabbing things from raw data tables in GP is always fun because you've got an open table and a work table and a historical table that are all pulling from it. So ideally, just as you see in like the sales transaction smart lists and things, you're looking to bring all of that data together in one spot. Where can the data come from? This day and age, a lot of places. And it continues to grow, which I'll show you in GP 2016. Anywhere that data exists today, it can be an Excel spreadsheet, it could be often its own little text table. There's a lot of areas that it can come from. Everyone in GP and CRM and everything benefits from the fact that you are running on a SQL server, which means that data is very accessible. But never rule out where you're storing data as inaccessible. We can't get to it. There's no way that we could grab that data from an Excel file that we're filling over here. Absolutely we could. We could look at grabbing that, downloading it, having you plug it in, something along those lines to grab that data. So, and all of these can talk together. You could have an Excel spreadsheet, as you saw in the diagram, feed to SQL and Access and all of that working together within your data warehouse. So once again, composing and bringing that together. And the list of available options, as I said, continues to grow on a daily basis. What's being made available, GP continues to pick up on that new technology, talking web services, things that are surfacing your data from, as you'll see on my laptop, out to the web and all sorts of cool stuff. So starting to get more and more of that available so that there doesn't have to be a lot of underlying architecture or data feeds or complex processes to get those up. So what I wanted to put in is, an idea, an example of how maybe you would look at business intelligence. What are we doing? So just some relevant terms, some of the databases we're talking about, so GP, CRM, external field service database, maybe something along those lines, all of those feeding into our data warehouse in the middle. And then the idea being is now we get aggregated data that is potentially based upon one or two or three of those data sources being composed into a singular report at that point. So we're looking at bringing in multiples, composing it, and then being able to report in any which manner off of that level, those levels of data, versus having to go out and grab and pull and grab and pull. So just some different things there where you may have sales data from GP pulling in, but then you're looking at corresponding that with CRM and so on. So again, bringing that data together, aggregating it, making it for multiple different reporting aspects. So strategic concepts. Some of the things that I've seen over time, both on a professional and personal level, that come into play whenever you're ever getting started with a reporting project. So where should you begin? How would you go about your thought process? And these are some of the different things, different points that come to me as I get in and anytime I start a conversation with it. So start small. I can't stress that one enough. As you get into these and you start to identify that you want to maybe start down the path of BI, or you want to look at a BI solution, or you want to start any of those different avenues, whether it be that you just want to start making something available in Excel that people refresh, or you want to go into Power BI, or whatever it may be, start in a specific area and a small subset. And the reason that I say that is a lot of times if you start in a singular small subset, the individuals being engaged in that process will pick up on that knowledge, and it will make the broader terms that you want to branch into easier to consume, easier to staff. People will start to be intuitive with the software. You have people who have a knowledge base from the previous small project that can probably lend a hand with the next one. So you start small, and then you can work into it and start learning the software, and then you can branch out from there. So talk with all roles in the actionable area, and I bring this one up because I've ran into it numerous times where I walk in and we'll get started talking through a report, and somebody at the low end of the totem pole hasn't had their input or anything along those lines, so they overlook something that should have been disclosed in that report, or maybe there's data that they've got hidden off somewhere that needs to be considered in it or something. So anytime you're looking for an actionable area that you want to discuss, that you want to report off, that you want to start surfacing some of that information from, make sure that you start and work your way up and talk to everybody that has their hand in that process. So as you're putting these together, of course, there's all the homework that you need to do, and that's compiling all of the different aspects of that intelligence, all of that intel that has been collected, that you've talked with the roles, you're bringing that all together, you're getting the examples of the hard copy reports, examples of the Excel databases that people are filling out, even the interactions. Anything that happens in a process where Joe walks over to Susie and hands her something or gives her the go-ahead or whatever it may be. Those are all the different things that you want to make sure you have that workflow of how you get to that data today. And that I made sure to include that it's both the internal and external data interaction. So it could be something where the data isn't even logged in the system. So next one is always thinking of the big picture as you come to the table for a BI project. Envision how your users will want to look at it. Obviously, you can go out and you can do a search on the web right now and look for any type of dashboarding solution, BI solution. Do your homework ahead of time, figure out to consume the information that you're going to be surfacing. Okay, it'd be great. I want my users to log into the web, and I want them to go to a website, and then voila, everything's just gorgeous and beautiful for them, and they see everything they want. Maybe we want it more in a defined, very detailed state where they go and they can print off the report or they can run the report or whatever it may be. So envisioning that end result that you're looking for the users to have usually adds to the conversation. It helps drive which way would make best solution, or helps give us several different areas that we could go down. Okay. You can do dashboards in Excel. Those are starting to open up to Office 365. So you got something there. You got Power BI for some cool dashboards. So there's a lot of different things where if you say you want this way, you could say, all right, could probably look at it from either here, here, or here. Here's the cost involved here. You've already got this one here. So there's a lot of those different things that come to the table, having that topic, that thought process done. And then the last one is, plan for the idea of future BI and reporting requirements. And the reason I throw that one out there is, so plan for the idea of future BI and reporting requirements. And the reason that I state that one, gosh, I didn't unmute myself.
Ed, we got it over here. You should be good.
Rock and roll. All right. So plan for the idea of the future BI and reporting requirements. The reason I say that is you don't want to lock yourself into a quick fix if you can avoid it. Obviously, we can surface and we can do a lot of different things with reporting. Okay, if you came to the table now and said, I want to get a view of what this looks like right now, I need this complex report. Okay, great. We could fire off and do a SQL report, crank through it, and get done with it. But if you take a step back from that, okay, we do all this development and we get one report. Chances are the information within that isn't built in any way. It's specific to that one data set, not necessarily aggregating the data or doing anything like that. So if you can take a step back and say, we want to get to this, but once we get to this, we could get to this, and we could get to this. And that could also feed from over here. You're starting to get into that broader topic of, well, maybe we start first with composing the data, bringing all of that data together, and then going from there for our first report. But now we have a composed data set, and we can build off of that one, and then the next one comes in, and we've already got all our data composed in here that we potentially need, or very little that we have to add on to. So now we can move on to the next one and the next one and the next one. So always keep that in mind, the future planning aspect of any type of business intelligence reporting option that you're looking for. We want to always plan for the future. I want to come to the table, and I want a long-lasting relationship with you guys when I work on anything, obviously. I want to make you smile. I want to make your reports look great, and you get the information that you want. But I also want to reduce the amount of time that I would necessarily have to spend on the next one and the next one, because a lot of the stuff is already in place and composed and ready to go. It's reusable. So anytime you get into BI, there's always the decision process that you kick off with, and how are those things identified, and where does it all come from? So usually the most common thing with any type of business intelligence is whenever a company just says they don't know what is going on. I don't have any idea what this department, this person actually does. I don't know what they do. So you've got problems within that. You've got alternatives. Okay, what else could we do in lieu of that? What alternatives do we have to report that information, and what all falls within there? And then what choices are necessarily made in that process as all of this funnels together. And you've identified your problems, you've identified the different choices that you have, the alternatives and everything working together there, and you end up with some decision information. So you got all this stuff dumping through the one pipe to help feed our decision process and where it goes. So where does that start? Well, like I just said, you've got, I can't think of a name to give somebody that probably isn't a customer, so I'm not going to say it. So you got this individual over here. It is the lowest end, and he's the originating user. He doesn't communicate, or when he does communicate, it goes to a wall and it stops there, and nobody really communicates that beyond him. It's not reaching as far as we need that piece of information to necessarily go. So that originating user starts. He has interactions within your company that create some sort of data, actionable intel. That moves on through your company in the entire process. It produces levels of information. The knowledge base begins. So now you have this knowledge flowing around, and you've got this individual who knows this, and you've got this individual that knows this, and you've got this other guy that knows all of this stuff, and everybody's got this internal knowledge base up here, and it's locked up, and you can't necessarily get to it. So that knowledge turns to decision with each one of those individuals along the way. Those decisions turn to some sort of action, and then the actions generate more data. So you've got this thing, and the one thing that I didn't add in here is obviously as this hits here, you kind of have that flowing back up in here, and potentially, this never-ending loop of all this intelligence that you're looking for. But as the action cycle flows through, again, trying to surface that information or make it where, the knowledge that one individual knows can be passed along to the next individual or the previous individual or anything. What has happened in my process as I've done it? Where do I fall within the decision processes in the company? So you've got multiple different layers to where the decision comes from and different terms to go along with it. So you've got the operational, and that's the structured daily activities. That's, to keep the business afloat. What things do we have to report off of? What things are actionable on a day-to-day basis? Yes, we've got all these customers that I need to call today for accounts receivable, so I'm going to go out and I'm going to call them today. So we've got that type of information. It's a short-term effect. We're going to go out, we're going to call, we're going to collect money, we're going to come back, rinse and repeat. We're going to keep that process going because that's keeping the company going. And those could exist in some sort of, team-level dashboards, KPIs, things like that, exactly what you've got to date. With a lot of the smart lists, you log in, you've got a list of customers past due, voila, I've got a collection list to go and dial up and start my collection process. So those are always at the low level. Next one you have is a tactical, and that's where, we're looking for semi-structured monthly activities, quarterly, just some of those little more drawn out. The term I had was, 18 months or less, something along those lines that goes with it. But, it's a midterm effect. At the mid-level processes, you're looking at scorecards, you're looking at enterprise dashboards, things showing performance. Okay, so we had all the operational tasks that we performed. We collected AR, we did this, we did that. How'd we do? Did we get an A+? And you're starting to build that up and work your way up the line there with your tactical ones. So you start at the low level, you start building up those metrics and the information. People are off and running and your company's looking great. At least you think so. So you move to the tactical bit to actually see all of the fruits of your labor. And then the last one here is the strategic, and this falls a lot with Chris's presentation on Profix, is that forecasting idea. So you're looking at long-term. Okay, I want to look today, but knowing where I was 6 months ago, a year ago, to today, to what I can expect for next year. What is that growth path that I'm looking at? So we're looking at the strategic planning at that point. This is up on the top level for the CEO's planning and, your management and things like that. They're able to look at this and say, everything's running swimmingly down here. Great. I see it on the mid-level. We've, met certain goals there, and I can pretty much figure that's just going to keep flowing through. So we're feeding everything and able to get that level of information out of there to be able to model and forecast. So 3 different topics that you could bring to the table and, discuss. Where do you want to start? Are you at the low level of information that you need? Are you at the mid-level? Are you at the strategic? If we started at the low level, how would it work with the tactical? How would it work with the strategic planning? Does it all feed together? A lot of times, yes. Sometimes no. So good thing that I have here is where to start. And this is based off of a series of questions that I have developed for one of the offerings that we're doing. I'll speak to that as we get to that towards the end and everything, but where to start? So again, back to that idea of cataloging everything you currently use to date to get a process done, whatever it may be. Okay, so catalog your current reporting solutions used to date. What am I using? What's available to me? How am I using it? And bring that to the table as you start on one of these endeavors for business intelligence. Draft an action list. Definitely plan ahead, and where do you want to be, and where do you find yourself specifically taking action upon? What are the departments? What are the areas that need it? And you're building up that action list to bring to the table and say, I need this, so I can do this, so I can do this. Catalog your current custom reports and data. So I know I said the reporting solutions used today, that's, we're using SRS, we're using SmartView, we're using Smart Lists, we're using Excel, anything along those lines, but then your current custom reports and data that you're doing. Do you have any custom data sets over here? Do you have any custom reports that you're running? Anything along those lines. And then the biggest one, the one that really adds to a great topic of discussion and, of course, for your overall vision is, where do you find yourself in a year, 5 years, 10 years? And we talked about that. Where do you see yourself in a year? Okay, we're looking at a good growth. In 5 years, I look to add 50 plus employees, 10 years plan. All right, I got, multiple new locations and we see ourselves being a major player in the market and, we're doing this and R&D and different things like that. So coming to the table with kind of that expected growth of where you envision yourself. So we get back to the topic then of great. You know, we've gone through, we kind of understand, hopefully up to this point, where the decisions come from, what business intelligence is, some of the thought processes that need to go into it. We get to the topic now of what tools, what things are available to me just to begin with. And I wanted to throw off a list here of some of the different ones that are available to you to date. You may be using these, you may not be using these. I think everybody at some point has used the GP native reports. Fortunately, unfortunately, you've got Management Reporter in there, maybe holding on to FRX as hard as you can still, some of the GP inquiries, refreshable reports, Business Analyzer to help digest some of those SQL reporting service reports and KPIs, Smart List Designer. So that's kind of a list of everything that's just available to you out of the box. I did throw Power BI on there because there is a free version of that, which you can surface data on your desktop and look at stuff and work with it there. That can be fed up to a standard version of the Power BI web, which users can look at. So that's kind of the idea there from the side that it requires a little bit of work to get to, but nothing that you have to go out and buy. The next one is, as you're planning that, and as we would go through any type of session, is what are some of the different options that are available out there for you to purchase and some of the routes that we would take. And these are some of the ones where GP obviously is specifically mentioned, or any of the Dynamics products are mentioned, which means that they've worked with Dynamics in the past, which means that they probably work, moving forward really well. So those are kind of we could go to those first, see how things look. But the thing that everybody needs to be aware of is that if you're looking at a dashboarding solution or some sort of web interface for an individual to see information and throw information to, granted all of these work with GP and have worked with GP, but if you go out and you say, you know what, I want to find a web interface dashboarding solution where I can grab data from SQL Server and show it to people. So when you get into that area, there are a lot, and this is just, from a real quick search where I went out and snagged some logos and stuff, but this is just kind of a list of everybody that has different BI dashboarding options out on the web. So don't think you're limited to just the ones that you see listed anywhere. I get calls from people on a daily basis or emails from individuals saying, you want to see my stuff? I think I had one with Cisco here recently that showed me some things in here. So there's a lot of different options that are out there, and individuals will speak to it and say, look, here's how you can see the data. The one thing that you always want to have is, how do we get the data there? How do you work with us? And how knowledgeable are you? Have you ever worked with GP is one of those good ones too. And I think it's interesting the amount of different ones that you see in that list there. If you ever go to like a GPUG or any of the other user groups and things like that, these guys are all over too. So there are so many of them still popping up that maybe their logo doesn't even show up yet. So it just continues to go and go and go. All right, so what I wanted to get into as we get through it are just some of the different BI options that are available to date that I feel fairly comfortable working with and that work well for me, that are simple and easy to use. So the first one we get into is an Excel-based reporting option. So do you want to grab data and refresh it and make it look beautiful in Excel and use their graphing solutions and everything like that to make some really nice dashboards? Things we're looking at are things that I've snipped from previous projects with customers and things like that we've developed in-house. So this one is a multi-sheet Excel document that users can go out and hit a little button and it runs through and it says, okay, you are this person. You can view all of this information, and it runs through and ticks all of these things up and down based off of where they stand for that specific point in time. And then they can utilize the slicers and all of that functionality from Excel that is readily available to you today with an Excel license. And I didn't know if anybody realized this, and I've probably said it just a few times. GP comes deployed, and again, back to that statement of if it's not deployed, let us know. But GP comes with a whole handful of pre-created Excel reports. And the best premise that I can give you for the majority of the Excel reports, if not all of them with the exception of the dashboards, is anywhere you see a smart list to date with little asterisks next to it was the out-of-the-box one, you have an Excel report that should go along with it. So that's kind of the benefit. If you can run it in smart list, think of it this way. I'm pulling up a smart list, I'm letting it tick through thousands of records, and I'm hitting export to Excel, and I'm slicing and dicing it and everything along those lines. There's a version of it available to you. Should be pretty darn close, and if not, then we can surface more information with it from there. But the idea being that instead of opening Excel or opening Smart List, letting it run, and then we're running through and exporting that all to GP or out to Excel, we're able to grab, in this case, the customer addresses. I know it's not very pretty, but just pulls a direct data dump from GP at that point. So benefit of this is obviously I didn't have to let it run all in GP and then export it to Excel and wait for it to download to Excel and then work with it from there. It's doing a SQL database connection and pulling that information out. All of this is easy to access for anybody who is knowledgeable of such things. All of these can be based off a SQL script, so if you find a SQL script that you love on the web, Victoria Uden, I think I've used her a few times, or anything like that, you can grab that from her website and throw it into these, save it, and voila, you have some data sets that are based off of information that she had out there in her views and reports and stuff that she uses. That's how we can make this thing work. The one thing that I will challenge you on and make you aware of is that there are some Excel spreadsheets that can take a long time to run, just depending on the amount of records that you have. So one activity that I've taken on with customers in the past is if you have an out-of-the-box Excel report that is unusable because it just sits and ticks and refreshing it is a pain or anything like that, we work to aggregate or reduce that amount of data. So I throw that out there where, okay, instead of going to sales transactions and it runs through all years back to 2002 or something, maybe instead we make the data set select and start 4 years ago dynamically or something like that. So we've done things like that in the past to make those things usable. The other options that you have out there, you've got the purchasing dashboards. These are great. So you got a purchasing dashboard, a sales dashboard, inventory dashboard, and a financial dashboard that are deployed with this. So there's an individual at Microsoft that had developed these, showed them off at some of the shows and things like that, and people kept asking him and asking him and asking him, so fruits of his labor got added to GP in 2013. So this is out here. Now the one thing that I have noticed is that there are some of these that require a little bit of rework. So just be aware of that some of these will not fire off and display data beautifully to begin with. You have to do a little bit of work with them where they're selecting, I think an example is some of these are selecting specific username or company names and things like that, like Fabricam data. So just keep in mind that you've got all these different Excel reports that are available to you to date. If you're running any smart list and exporting it to Excel, talk to me. We can talk through how you would get that where it's just a refreshable run and you don't have to keep running through it and exporting it at that point. All right. Oh. I lost my load. So those are Excel. The next one is SQL reporting services, and these are your let's define something and make it. What is it that you're looking for? How do you want to work with it? A lot of the reports that you see out on SRS to date, so SQL reporting services gets deployed with GP also. A lot of the out-of-the-box GP reports are available to you in SRS. Some of them work really well. Some of them need, again, a little bit of tweaking I've seen over the past. Hopefully, I haven't dug into the ones that they deploy with GP 2016, whether those are fixed or not. But out-of-the-box ones deploy that you can go out. So think of, your GL summary trial balance. Instead of running the beautiful one from GP, you could run it from SRS. What benefit does that give you is SRS reports can export to Excel, and they can export to PDF, and they can do all this other wonderful stuff. So you got some different options with them there. And of course, writing a report in SRS is a lot easier than trying to write it in the GP report writer. So a lot of times, anytime that you're coming to the table with the need for a custom report, this is one of the great areas we can go to. So to discuss, real quick, bring up, so ad hoc reporting, Excel works really well for that. SRS, the concept behind this one is it is a really good formalized custom reporting solution where you're looking for things to be set in stone like a trial balance. We want to run it. We want it to report data. We want to give that to somebody. We don't want people slicing and dicing our trial balance. We just want it there for them to see. I did throw this in here. This was another neat thing that worked on for a customer where it was just a list of KPIs. So these are all just aggregated together and put in one different thing, but pulling in different analytics that they were looking for all in one area. Very simplified data set, and that actually runs pretty fast. And I'll show you that real quick. So your SRS reports should be deployed out on your reporting server from GP. If they are installed, every single one of the modules that you're underneath, sales, purchasing, financial, wherever it's at, there should be a list for reporting services reports. Now, once you run that and click on it, it should give you a list of the available reports that are out there. And there's a whole slew of different names and such. Most of them follow suit with the name that it would represent in GP2. So where I need a trial balance, there's a trial balance. And you should just be able to click on those and drive out to them. Now, there is a certain level of configuration that has to go into play for these to work. You have to have some SQL level security and other aspects put into it. So there's a certain level of security to make sure that your Windows user is validated. But then you can run those from there and report off of them. And those are hosted in a browser environment. I've seen people who keep this all internal. I've seen people who work to make it outward facing. So where these reports are actually on a hosted website that users can hit from outside the domain, from a smartphone or whatever it may be. And that's kind of where all of the presentation for reporting out of GP for individuals outside of the office, I like to think, originated from. So the next one, oh, you told me F5. Shift F5. That's all right, there's not that many of them. That's all right. Right. Well, Shift F5 is always all right. So the next one on my list is the Business Analyzer. We brought this one up in the past. There we go. So Business Analyzer is a product that's been around for a while, back to 2010 or so, and there was a desktop application version of it that you could run that would pull up and put these on there. There's also been, I don't know if you've seen it, but you've got Business Analyzer on your home page that you can throw up. And these are all represented by SRS reports, once again, the ones that you can run on your home page. You also have an application that you can run from now Android. I don't know if they've moved it to phones yet. I got a version of it that I was able to run on my phone, but tablets, Windows Phone, iOS, Android, all of those can run the Business Analyzer app over here. The benefit of that one is, again, that can be outward facing. And then you've also got the ones that can be on the home page. So just to give you an idea of how this all works to unifying the system. So here I've got Business Analyzer pulled up locally on my laptop. It is pulling out to our demo database and bringing data back here, of which I can look at and I can run and I can refresh and do all of that wonderful stuff. So if I wanted to refresh this down here, I could refresh my data. Runs out to our server based off of Wi-Fi, which is nice and fast. And it pulls the data back in here. From the demo server, I can obviously run some of those different aspects from here. This is the desktop application that's available. So if you don't have Windows 10 devices or anything that you can get Business Analyzer on for the Windows Store app, then there's the desktop version of it that's available. And then one little cool thing here. So we're on my phone, and got the Business Analyzer app on there. which means that I can be walking around using data on my phone to be able to pull up those reports again. So that's the concept, that anywhere level of data that I could pull up. So I don't know if anybody's ever used SideSync. It's just doing a screen share of my phone at that point. So that data anywhere. And the nice thing about Business Analyzer, at least the app version that we're looking at right at the moment, is that it can surface and be configured to run SRS reports. It can be configured to run MR reports in some capacity, and it can be set up to run Excel reports. And Mike, I know, has done some extensive things with that, so he could talk through some of the nuances that I know he's uncovered with those. But that's the idea, being that area that, you know, as we deploy new KPIs and SRS reports and stuff to your reporting server, now we can grab that and throw it into our Business Analyzer. So we could surface those through here, and then as I'm able to scroll through that and look at more of them and such. So that's the Business Analyzer. Again, running off of those KPIs. If you didn't see them on my home page, you can do those to date on the home page. You can grab those all and throw them on there. The little SRS one that we were looking at previously, I actually set those up to be homepage KPIs for the individual that wanted those, which means that he could throw those all on his homepage. But what I've done with mine is I've thrown them on here. I told it to show them all, and then I've got a whole bunch of them on here, so I kind of have my own little dashboard as I log into GP that's pulling from that set of data. So then from there, the next one that is on the board, and if you've heard anything about it or seen it, or they're hyping it more and more and more and more and more and more, and it's going to become something that's mentioned as Smart List, I'm sure one day, is what I'll be doing with it, but it's Power BI. So this is one of the new endeavors. It's been around for a little while. Back to Office 365, they've used it there and everything, but it continues to evolve, is how I like to picture it. So now they've got it browser-based. They have a desktop version of it. And now, in GP 2016, you can actually surface it all on your home page. So the idea here is that you get a really nice dashboarding capability with this, where let's say that you start at the lowest level and you develop something in the Power BI desktop. Had everything else pulled up ready to go, and this is one little bit that I there we go. So the idea being that we could have, you know, Power BI desktop. We start here, we put together our reports, we grab our data sources, we map everything along those lines, and then we look to push that up to the web. Now, Power BI out of the box is free. You can download Power BI desktop today and use it and do whatever in the world you want to it, connect to SQL Server, create your own little dashboards off of data sets and things like that. So you have the flexibility today where you don't have to drop a dime on it. What you can do with that is static data. Anything where you grab from an Excel spreadsheet or you bring in the data and you want to publish that to the web, you can do that also to date. So once you sign up for Power BI, you have a free version of it where you can actually push from Power BI desktop to the web, which means to solve maybe an immediate need where you need individuals to be able to log in and see data outside of your organization. Now you're able to have somebody in-house run a report, grab that data, publish it, and then that individual is able to log into powerbi.com and see that data on the web while they're out on the road, wherever they are. So it finally pulled up, thank you. And it's pretty intuitive to work with. It does take a little bit of getting used to, and I continue to push myself to learn and learn and learn, because at some point somebody's going to come to me and go, you know, Power BI? And I'm like, and if I say no, then I haven't done my job. So I'm diving further and further into this, but once you grab a data set, you can compose it, you can put everything together. Once you have it looking the way you want, you just publish it, and then it shows up on the web. So I have all these different reports that I've put together, and I threw those up to the web, and then I have the web portal to be able to browse around. And again, we've got our web version of this, where this is all reading from data that has been grabbed from my laptop and pushed to the web. Now, the version that I have, I did step up to Power BI Pro, and the benefit that that gives me is that's refreshable data sets. So like I said, to date, you could grab static data, push it to the web version. If you're looking for something a little more automatic, where a person comes into this and they don't even have to wait for somebody to do it on a daily basis or anything, they hit refresh and it runs, that's the Power BI version that I have. And this one actually is connecting from here back to a gateway that's installed on my laptop, which means that then that data again, if I was to run to our server, which is in our lovely hosting environment downtown, where again, on the web interface there, completely aside from all of the network here, and it's grabbing data from my laptop back here. So that concept again of, mine is a rolling data server essentially at this point, the way that I've got it configured. Power BI is actually very nice because just like the business analyzer piece, it does have a phone version. And you don't have to go through any magical hoops for this one. If you go to the Google Play, you will find it today. So, and it's a nice interface that works with it at that point. And these all still maintain the capability to drill down into the levels of information. Here I am clicking into the period balance, and I can drill into that information and everything, point and click on my phone. So obviously lots of things that are available out of the box. This is just 4 of them that we kind of dove through, that 3 of them being ones that you've probably heard of at some point. Power BI is probably something you'll be hearing out of at a future user group. I want to dive into it even further, but it continues to grow, and that ability for you to come to me as a client and say, I need to gain access to this information, and I need for individuals to be able to see this information. I have all of these tools at my disposal that I can communicate with you and talk you through. And again, a lot of them are available to you to date, which means that your hands are not tied to make a purchase, but instead go out and actually start diving into those things yourself. Lots and lots and lots as the system continues to evolve. One of the big things, too, is that now they've added OData into GP 2016. So that's one thing that I didn't mention, is now that there's these outside data connections where you can actually publish data directly from GP to an OData source, which means that Office 365 can snag that from the web service, which means that you could do refreshable Excel reports out on Office 365 for individuals too.